Homeless at 15, Carter found an abandoned mine that nobody cared about. What started as a desperate search for shelter became a journey of survival, courage, and self-discovery. Could he turn this forgotten darkness into a place of hope? Hello, everyone. Before we start, join our YouTube family by subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to like this video and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Now let's get into the story. Carter did not slam the door when he left. He closed it gently. The small blue trailer behind him smelled of smoke and old oil. A home he never really had. Now even that was gone. "You're not my problem," his uncle had said that morning. Carter didn't argue. He quietly packed his backpack with a hoodie, 2 shirts, his notebook, and the small flashlight he had fixed last winter. By afternoon, he was walking along the cracked road out of Black Hollow. The town had once been loud with coal trucks and workers, but now it felt dead. Empty storefronts stared at him like forgotten memories. Even the gas station closed earlier than usual. Carter kept his eyes on Iron Ridge Mine, looming in the distance. Everyone in town knew its story. A tunnel collapsed 12 years ago. No one died, but the company left quickly, sealing the entrance. Locals whispered that something was left behind. Hidden in the dark, abandoned tunnels. He reached the rusted fence and walked along its edge until he found a broken section. Slipping through, he climbed toward the old equipment sheds. The wood was gray and brittle, but one shed had a mostly intact roof. Its door hung crookedly, creaking as he pushed it open. Inside, dust-covered ropes, rusted shovels, stacks of timber beams, and folded canvas tarps. Carter stepped in and closed the door. The wind outside quieted. For the first time all day, he felt relief. It wasn't safe and it wasn't warm, but it was his choice. Freedom, even uncertain and fragile, was his. He explored the shed, finding a corner to make a bed from old tarps and empty boxes. Outside, the wind moaned through broken machinery and rusted signs. Carter listened carefully, not a sound of anyone coming. No one to report him, no rules to follow, no one to send him away. He thought about tomorrow. Food, water, safety. Each was a question with no easy answer. But he also thought about the tunnels below. The stories of old miners who once worked here. Some spoke of hidden chambers, secret storage, tools abandoned and untouched. Maybe even something valuable. Something that could change his life. Carter lay down on the tarps, flashlight at his side. His heart still raced, but he allowed himself one small smile. Today he had chosen his own path. Tomorrow he would explore deeper. He would take the mine not as a threat, but as a chance. The abandoned mine might just become more than shelter. It might become his future. Carter woke to the smell of damp earth. The shed had cooled overnight, the wind whistling through cracks in the walls. He rubbed his eyes, listening. Nothing but the distant caw of a crow and the occasional rattle of loose metal. After a quick breakfast of granola and water, he tightened his boots and pulled his backpack onto his shoulders. Today he decided he would go closer to the mine entrance. Stories were one thing, but Carter needed proof, and maybe a way to survive beyond the shed. The path to the mine was steep, tangled with underbrush and jagged rocks. Carter used an old mining map he had found pinned in the shed, faded and marked with red X's. He wasn't sure what they meant, but it gave him direction. Each step made him more aware of the isolation, and a mix of fear and excitement pulsed through him. Finally, he reached the tunnel entrance. A collapsed section blocked the main shaft, but a smaller side tunnel remained. It was narrow and dark. Carter's flashlight cut a thin line through the black. He checked his backpack, rope, water, and a notebook. That would have to do. He lowered himself inside, scraping arms and legs against the rough stone. The air smelled of damp rock and old wood. It was quiet, almost too quiet. Carter's imagination ran wild. Could there be tools left behind? Old maps? Maybe supplies miners had hidden before the mine closed? He pressed forward, careful not to disturb loose stones. About 50 feet in, he noticed something unusual. A pile of wooden crates stacked against the wall. They were dusty, cobwebbed, but sturdy. Carter's pulse quickened. He pulled at one and it shifted. Inside were more crates, each sealed with iron locks rusted through decades. Some had remnants of old mining equipment, pickaxes, lanterns, but one crate held something different. Carter pried it open carefully. Inside was a small stack of notebooks, ledgers, and faded photographs of miners and their families. It wasn't money, not yet, but it was a story waiting to be told. Someone had kept records of the mine's operation, its secrets, maybe even maps of hidden chambers. He realized then that the mine wasn't just a shelter or a forgotten place, it was a puzzle, a history waiting for someone brave enough to explore. And that someone was him. Carter grabbed the notebooks, stuffed them into his backpack, and sat on a fallen timber to catch his breath. This wasn't the end of his struggle. It was only the beginning. He had a place to stay, but now he had purpose. The abandoned mine might be dangerous, and tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time, Carter felt the spark of control over his own life. He was no longer just a boy abandoned by the world. He was a boy building a future, one dark step at a time. Carter emerged from the side tunnel, blinking against the fading sunlight. The air outside smelled of pine and earth, sharp and clean. He set the notebooks down on a flat rock and flipped one open. The pages were yellowed, the ink faded, but the writing was meticulous. Names, dates, even small sketches of tunnels and equipment. He traced a finger over the lines. Someone had documented everything from collapses to hidden shafts. One page showed a secret chamber deep within the mine, labeled Storage Vault, claimed by none. Carter's heart raced. Could it hold supplies, tools, maybe something to help him survive? He knew he had to get inside, but the path looked treacherous. Over the next few hours, Carter explored the mine carefully, marking his route with chalk and string. Every step was measured. Every creak of the ceiling made him pause. But each discovery, the broken rails, a forgotten miner's helmet, a half-collapsed wooden bridge, told a story and gave him ideas. How could he repurpose these materials? Could they help him make the mine habitable? By evening, he returned to the shed with his backpack heavier from a small collection of tools. Hammers, nails, a lantern, and ropes. He laid out the notebooks and began sketching a plan. The mine could be more than a shelter. With time, he could clean the tunnels, reinforce the walls, and maybe even create a place that felt like a real home. That night, as he lay on his makeshift bed, Carter felt something new. Hope. He thought of his mom, gone too soon, and the life he had been forced to leave behind. But now he had a project, a mission. He whispered promises to himself, small affirmations that he would survive, that he would thrive. The first step would be simple. Clean the mine entrance, secure it, and create a safe place to sleep inside. Tomorrow he would carry water and maybe some food scraps into the tunnels. Little by little he would make it his own. Carter realized survival wasn't just about escaping hunger or cold. It was about creating stability, finding control in a life that had felt chaotic for far too long. The notebooks were his guide, the mine was his canvas, and he was ready to start building. Brick by brick, step by step. For the first time since he'd been homeless, Carter didn't feel invisible. He had a plan, a goal, and a place that belonged to him. The abandoned mine, once a symbol of decay, was becoming a beacon of possibility, and Carter, a 15-year-old boy abandoned by circumstance, was ready to turn it into something extraordinary. The next morning, Carter returned to the mine before sunrise. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of wet soil and pine needles. He carried a small bucket of water and a bundle of cloth to clean the tunnel floor. The notebooks had given him a rough map of the passages, but he knew the old structure could collapse at any moment. Each step required focus and caution. As he worked, he found small pockets of mineral deposits, shiny flecks embedded in the walls. At first they seemed useless, but then an idea struck him. He could use some of these stones as tools, markers, or even decorations to brighten the dim tunnels. Every tiny discovery reminded him that this place, abandoned for decades, still had value. By afternoon, Carter had reinforced the entrance with old wooden beams he found scattered outside. They were cracked and weathered, but strong enough to support the top of the tunnel. He then cleared a corner to make a small sleeping area, arranging rocks to form a low wall and lining it with old blankets he had carried from the shed. While resting, Carter remembered the few supplies he had saved from his last town stop: a small can of beans, a loaf of bread, a bottle of water. He ate slowly, savoring the taste, thinking about how every meal now required planning, strategy, and effort. Survival was no longer about waiting for help. It was about creating solutions from what he had. Evening brought another challenge. Shadows stretched along the tunnel walls, and strange noises echoed through the passages. Carter froze at the sound of scraping wood. A rat? Or maybe another person exploring the abandoned mine. He gripped the small hammer he had found, ready to defend himself, but no one appeared. The mine was alive with unseen movements, reminding him that it wasn't just a shelter, it was a world with its own dangers. He lit a lantern, watching the flickering light dance on the walls. The mine had transformed from a dark, scary place to a canvas for possibility. He could already imagine reinforcing the chambers, building a simple table, even a tiny kitchen space. Every hour of effort brought a sense of accomplishment. Before sleep, Carter wrote notes in his own journal, a habit he had started that day. He recorded the structure's layout, ideas for improvements, and reminders of safety measures. For the first time, he felt like he was creating a life rather than merely surviving one. The abandoned mine was no longer just a hiding place. It was a beginning, and Carter, 15 and alone, had found a spark of control in a world that had offered him none. The following days were a mix of trial and discovery. Carter spent hours hauling fallen rocks, clearing debris, and patching small cracks in the mine walls. Every effort brought the place closer to a safe, livable space, but exhaustion often left him sore and hungry. He realized survival wasn't just about finding food, it was about protecting himself from the environment. One afternoon, while exploring a narrow side passage, Carter stumbled upon a small hidden alcove. It was covered in dust, cobwebs, and the smell of old earth. At first, it seemed empty, but then he noticed a bundle of old ropes, a cracked helmet, and a rusty pickaxe tucked into a corner. These were tools left behind by the miners decades ago. To Carter, they were priceless. With them, he could reinforce walls faster, dig new passages, and even create storage areas. As he carried the tools back to his main chamber, he thought about how little he had before, just his clothes, a few blankets, and his wits. Now, even in this abandoned mine, he felt a sense of abundance he had never known. The hard work was exhausting, but each improvement gave him hope. That evening, he tried something new. He arranged a small area near the back of the chamber as a workspace. Using stones and wooden scraps, he made a flat surface to prepare meals, sort supplies, and write in his journal. The space was tiny, but it symbolized control and order in a chaotic world. Then came a test of courage. A sudden tremor shook the mine, sending dust and small rocks falling from the ceiling. Carter ducked, heart racing, and realized that despite his improvements, the mine remained unpredictable. He reinforced the area with extra beams, double-checking every wall and ceiling section. It was tedious, dangerous, and exhausting, but he couldn't afford mistakes. Later that night, Carter sat on his makeshift bed, exhausted but alive. He thought about the life he had left behind, about the streets and shelters, about the fear and uncertainty. The mine wasn't perfect, but it was his sanctuary. For the first time, he felt a flicker of pride. He had created a space that was his own, a foundation for the life he dreamed of building. As sleep took him, he realized something important. Survival wasn't just enduring the world, it was shaping it. And Carter, just 15, had begun turning darkness into possibility. The next morning, Carter woke to a cold draft sneaking through the cracks in the mine's entrance. The shadows of the narrow beams stretched across, the floor like fingers reaching for him. He shivered but smiled. He had survived the tremor yesterday, and that small victory felt monumental. Today, he decided he would make the entrance safer. Using the old pickaxe and ropes he'd found, Carter reinforced the doorway. He dug shallow trenches to prevent water from seeping in during rain and used rocks to support the crumbling edges. The work was slow, and several times his hands bled on rough stone. But each strike, each adjustment, made the mine feel more like home. While arranging supplies, he remembered the small stream nearby. Fresh water was crucial, so he built a rudimentary pulley system using rope and a bucket to make trips easier. The system was simple, yet it saved energy and time. For the first time, Carter realized that clever thinking often mattered more than brute strength. In the afternoon, he explored further into the mine, curious about passages he hadn't dared to enter. One tunnel ended abruptly at a wall of collapsed rock, but another opened into a surprisingly wide cavern. Sunlight filtered faintly through cracks in the ceiling, revealing shimmering mineral deposits on the walls. He paused, awe washing over him. Even in this forgotten place, beauty existed. It reminded him that life could hold unexpected surprises, even in hardship. Carter returned to his main chamber with a renewed sense of purpose. He cleared a corner to store food and tools separately. Organization had become more than comfort, it was survival. That night, he cooked a small meal, savoring every bite. As he ate, he realized something profound. He was learning to thrive, not just survive. Just as he was about to rest, he heard a faint noise echoing through the tunnels, scraping, like rocks shifting. He froze. His heart pounded. The mine, as safe as he was making it, was unpredictable. Carefully, he crept toward the sound, carrying only a lantern. He discovered a family of bats nesting in a high crevice. Relief and fascination mixed in him. Life existed here too, in forms he hadn't noticed. Lying on his makeshift bed that night, Carter felt a mix of exhaustion and excitement. The mine was no longer just a shelter, it was a living, breathing world he was shaping. Each challenge, each danger was a lesson, and he was beginning to understand that turning this abandoned mine into a home would take courage, patience, and ingenuity beyond anything he had imagined. Carter's hands were raw, bleeding from the rough edges of the collapsed tunnel he was trying to clear. Dust filled the air, making it hard to breathe, but he couldn't stop. Every second counted. If the support beams gave way, the main passage could seal off everything he'd worked for. Sweat stung his eyes, and he spat on the dirt floor trying to keep focus. He paused to catch his breath and noticed something odd. A faint shimmer along the far wall. At first, he thought it was a trick of the dust and dim light from the lantern he'd rigged. But stepping closer, he realized the wall was smoother here. Unlike the jagged rock around it, there was a small seam, almost invisible, like someone had carefully carved it decades ago. His pulse quickened. Could this be a hidden section of the mine? One his grandfather had mentioned in stories. Carter pressed his hand against the seam. It shifted slightly under his touch. Heart racing, he grabbed a crowbar from his bag and pried gently. A section of the wall slowly swung open with a grating sound, revealing a narrow, dark passage. He hesitated, listening. The silence of the mine pressed on him, heavy and tense. Finally, he whispered, "Here goes everything." Inside, the tunnel was cramped, the air colder and heavier. The walls glistened faintly, damp with minerals. Carter moved slowly, careful not to disturb loose rocks. As he advanced, he spotted marks etched into the walls, lines and symbols, almost like instructions. They weren't modern. Someone had spent time here, leaving these signs for a reason. Each symbol made him feel closer to a secret, a purpose he had never expected. A sudden rumble echoed from behind. One of the beams he'd reinforced earlier groaned under the weight of the mine. He froze, heart hammering, and held his breath. The sound faded, but the warning remained. This place was alive, dangerous, and fragile. Carter knew he couldn't rush. Every step forward required focus, patience, and the courage to face whatever might be waiting. Then faintly ahead, he saw it, a small weathered door, half hidden in shadows. Rust and age had claimed its hinges, but it was intact. His hand went to the old key he'd found months ago, the one his grandfather had said was for the heart of the mine. This had to be it, the part of the mine that could change everything. Carter swallowed hard, knowing that whatever lay beyond that door would define the future he was building, step by careful step. Carter turned the key slowly, each click echoing through the tight tunnel. The door groaned but yielded, swinging inward to reveal a small chamber barely big enough to stand in. The air smelled of damp earth and old wood, but there was a strange warmth, like the mine itself was holding its breath. Dust motes floated in the narrow beams of his lantern, catching the light like tiny sparks of gold. Inside, the chamber was empty except for a single workbench against the far wall. Tools were neatly arranged, hammers, chisels, and measuring instruments that looked decades old but meticulously maintained. Carter's eyes lingered on a stack of journals bound in leather, each stamped with his grandfather's initials. The handwriting inside was precise. Notes about structural integrity, water flow in the mine, and plans for a small hidden shelter. Carter realized his grandfather had prepared this space long before he was born, leaving a blueprint for survival and something more, a legacy. He flipped through the pages, feeling the weight of history in every word. There were sketches of reinforced tunnels, secret storage compartments, and a safe area where supplies could be kept dry. One entry caught his attention. The mine is more than a shelter. It is a foundation for everything to come. Protect it, and it will protect you. His chest tightened. Carter understood that this wasn't just about surviving the mine. It was about building a future from it. A sudden clatter startled him. He spun toward the entrance, heart pounding, but saw nothing. The mine was quiet again, almost too quiet. He shook his head and laughed nervously. He was alone. Yet the presence of his grandfather's meticulous work made it feel like someone else was there, guiding him. Carter began clearing a corner of the chamber, stacking rocks and debris to create a small workspace. Every swing of the pickaxe, every careful adjustment of the beams, brought a strange sense of purpose. He realized that surviving wasn't enough. He had to make this place the livable, strong and safe for anything that came next. Hours passed unnoticed. When Carter finally leaned against the wall, exhausted, he looked around the chamber with a new sense of ownership. The mine wasn't just a hiding place or a ruin, it was a seed. And with careful hands, courage, and a stubborn heart, he could grow something that would change everything for him, and maybe even for those he cared about. Carter woke stiff from a night on the cold concrete floor, but his mind buzzed with ideas. The mine was no longer just a place to hide. It was becoming a project, a vision he could shape. He lit the lantern and studied the journals again, making a mental plan. There were tunnels branching off. Some partially collapsed, others filled with water. Each one presented a challenge, but also an opportunity. He started with the entrance tunnel. Water had pooled in spots, making the floor slippery and dangerous. Carter patched the leaks with clay and wood from the old support beams, testing each fix carefully. Sweat ran down his forehead as he worked, muscles aching. But each successful repair made the space feel more like home. For the first time in weeks, he felt a flicker of pride. Midday, he paused and listened. The forest above was alive with birds and rustling leaves. It reminded him of his little sister, and a pang of longing hit him. He realized that building this mine wasn't just about survival. It was about creating a place where he could bring someone he cared about, someone who could trust that this was safe. The thought strengthened his resolve. He ventured deeper into the mine, following one of the narrow side tunnels. It twisted unexpectedly, and opened into a chamber filled with old mining carts and rusty tools. Carter imagined the miners who had worked here decades ago. Their sweat, their struggles, their laughter. They had left traces behind. He carefully cleaned and organized the space, creating a corner that could serve as storage and another that might someday be a living area. As evening fell, the lantern casting long shadows on the stone walls, Carter reflected on his progress. Every hour, every effort felt like a step toward something bigger. The mine was transforming, not magically, but with persistent, careful work. And with each small victory, he grew more confident in his ability to face the world outside. A sudden gust of wind from the tunnel made the lantern flicker. Carter froze, heart hammering. The mine was still, but the sound reminded him that dangers existed, both outside and inside. He tightened his grip on the pickaxe. Challenges would come, but he felt ready to meet them. Sitting against a stone wall, tired but determined, Carter realized that he was no longer the frightened 15-year-old who had wandered into this mine. He was becoming someone capable of creating, protecting, and leading. And the abandoned mine, once a symbol of despair, was now the cornerstone of his new life. Carter woke to the distant call of an owl echoing through the tunnels. The mine had become familiar, almost comforting, but he knew he couldn't linger forever in solitude. He pulled himself up, stretching sore muscles, and checked the reinforced sections of the tunnels. Each improvement felt like laying a brick in a foundation, not just of stone, but of his own confidence. He decided it was time to tackle the largest chamber, the one deep inside that had collapsed partially years ago. The roof sagged and old timber beams had rotted. Carter measured carefully, planned how to support it with spare wood, and began the painstaking work. Every hammer strike, every adjustment demanded focus. One wrong move could mean injury or worse. But with each section he secured, the space felt more like a true shelter. While working, Carter thought about the future, how he could make this mine more than a hideout. He imagined a small kitchen area, a sleeping nook, and even a hidden corner for valuables. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was preparation for a life he could call his own. He realized that every decision he made shaped not only his present but the possibilities of tomorrow. Mid-afternoon, he stopped to drink from his small water bottle, surveying the chamber. The beams held strong. Dust and dirt covered every surface, but he saw the potential. For a brief moment, he allowed himself a small smile. He was building stability from chaos, a place to rest, a place to think, a place to plan. As night fell, shadows stretched across the walls of the mine. The quiet was different now, not empty but alive with possibilities. Carter lit a lantern and wrote in his journal about the day's progress, the plans for tomorrow and the lessons he had learned. Patience, persistence, and ingenuity were as important as any tool. A soft scrape echoed from the far tunnel, and Carter froze. It could have been a falling stone, an animal, or someone discovering his refuge. His heart raced, but he reminded himself that fear could not control him. Every risk he faced was part of growth. Carefully, he investigated, finding only a small raccoon that scurried away. Relief washed over him. Before sleeping, Carter placed a small wooden box in a secure corner of the mine. Inside, he stored his most treasured items: a notebook, a picture of his family, and a few personal mementos. It was a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in hardship, he could preserve what mattered most. He lay down against the reinforced wall, exhausted but determined. The mine, once abandoned and forgotten, had transformed into a symbol of his resilience, and Carter knew, deep inside, that this was just the beginning. His journey from homelessness to mastery of this space was not complete, but the foundation for everything he could become was finally solid.